This conference will now be recorded.
I'm going to make you presenter. And then I'm not going to stop your forward progress. So our goal is for you to create one of our reports and then do an inquiry, right?
Yeah, except there are no real inquiries related to PLM.
So
none that I think that you guys will use particularly. So we'll go ahead and build a report. Yeah.
All right, coming to you right now.
Okay. So first things first, you're going to go to the navigation pane and you're going to type in reports. So within Blue Cherry, there's two modules for reports. One is the builder, one is the launcher. So we do these two different modules because the builder is where you're going to build it and the launcher is where you're going to give access to team members to run that report, either ad hoc or they can schedule it from there. A lot of times you'll see that there's only a couple users within an organization that know how to write reports. Reason being is because it is more of a specialized function where you have to know where specific shells or data is within the system to pull it onto your report. And also because you don't want users just creating duplicate reports and kind of on their own creating repeated levels of reports. You kind of want to organize it and most likely think of it strategically to where each department probably needs a very similar report, and then you can apply specific filters to it. So for the sake of today's training, we're going to go ahead and go into the report builder. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see where there's different shelves that are listed out, and they are grouped in these little roll-up types of features. So for PLM, you'll find most of them in product lifecycle management or product development management module right here. You'll see that all of these different report shells that are listed here coordinate to the tabs that you'll find in design development or in the FTA. So the information is grouped and the data is on each of those tabs, and there's a report shell that is connected to it. You might also find some PLM related reports under base module. So here you could find things like cut and sold is in there, also reports relating to the style master and royalty are in here if you're using those. And also within costing that's related to PLM, there's a whole module or a little roll up, roll down kind of grouping that you could run reports based off of what's in your Blue Cherry cost sheets, which is a tab that's located on design development. For the sake of today's training, what we're going to do is build a simple sample tracking report. So in order to do that, you need to know where this data lives. And if we go over to just an instance of design development, it's kind of an easy way to figure out what shell you might use. So if you go into an instance of design development or a design master, you can see the names of the tabs are listed here. With sample tracking, we want to report on data that is on the sample evaluation tab. So if you go in back to that little kind of outline of the different modules and groupings and the shells, you can go down here and you can see sample evaluation is most likely the one that we want. There happens to be two options that are listed here, and you'll see that this is common amongst the tab names. So there's a design header, there's design header notes, there's sample evaluation header, sample evaluation header notes. The notes references specifically the memos that are attached on these lines. So you'll see there's notes on the vendors tab, there's notes on the design header, and there's notes on sample evaluation. There's also notes on the FTA, so you'll see that over here as well. Anywhere where you see those notes, if you want to create a communication report on those notes, you would create it from this shell. In all the other instances, you would report it just from the tab name or the tab reference name, so design vendors, design headers, sample evaluation header. I'm going to go ahead and click into this, and I'm going to create new. And that's going to bring us to kind of the main screen of Report Builder once you're in a shell. So at the very top of it, it's got the report name is defaulted based off of the report shell name. The representative is the person who's creating it. So I'm currently logged in as CGS admin. And then you have type. So this is giving a bit more information on access. I would recommend that all of your reports are created at a user level for right now, meaning if anybody else went into the system, they would not have access to see this report until I so choose and change that. You can then move that on later once it's finalized, you've tweaked it, you've formatted it, all that kind of stuff. You tested the data. You can change it over to something like corporate, or you can change it to a specific user group. If you select group, and once you click save, you'll see that the user group opens up where you can dictate what specific group it goes to. The header will also capture the last time the report was run, just for your reference. You can see whether these reports are being used or not. If you want to do cleanup at any time for your report, it's really easy to search by last run, and you can find out which ones maybe aren't applicable to the team and address maybe why they're not being used, that type of thing. Template name is just going to be for your report name. So this is going to be visible to the users via Report Launcher. So to segue over here, users would have access to Report Launcher for the most part. This is pretty much considered best practice. Here's where they can run those reports. They can schedule reports. Also, the easiest way to kind of allow them not to navigate through these panes on the left-hand side is have them find it once, and just like everything on the navigation pane too, right-click it, and they can add it to their My Report favorites over here. That way, team members can just click on that, open it up, enter in a filter, and run it ad hoc, or they can schedule it from the Report Launcher there. But that way they don't have to go through this kind of like folder tree for all the different shells to find the report. If you guys give them quick instructions to access it once, then it's can be favorited and never looked at again in that manner. So going back to the builder, this template name is exactly how they're going to see it. So we're going to create a sample tracking report. So I'm going to name it exactly that. Nothing more, nothing less. And then we're going to go down to the bottom section under layout. And I'm going to go ahead and just hide my ribbon for a second so that we get a bit more screen space. You can see on the left-hand side, these are all the fields that are in this shell for you to choose to create your sample tracking report. These are the ones that are available. It says here 147, selected are 8. And then, so the combination of fields in this report shell is 148 plus 7. So 155 fields out there for you to choose from. If you double click, like you saw that I just did, you can remove a selected field and put it back over to the left available. I'm going to remove a couple of the default fields because I don't think that you guys will use this. So I'm going to remove revision number. And I'm going to leave everything else here because these are going to be pretty pertinent. So we've got design number, sample size, sample evaluation, factory, and DIMPACT. When you're designing your reports, I recommend that you guys design them in Excel. Open up a new workbook. And from here, I can do it right now, show you how this would be structured. So what I would normally recommend doing is design how you want to see this. So I'm going to lay this out in kind of logical order. I'm going to say my first column I want is design number, then I want description or the name of the item. So I can tell what sample this is being requested or what design this sample is being requested at. And we're looking to create essentially a basic listing here of all of the open sample requests that are out there. So design number, description, let's do sample type. So we can tell whether it's design, pre-production, production. Based off of that, we might create some runner schedules and reports with using that as the filter. So maybe I want a design tracking, sample tracking report versus a production related sample tracking report so that each individual team gets their own reports. You can do that based off of filtering on any of the fields that are on your report. So I'm going to do something like create date. It'll be called sample request date. Let's see, sample due date is also a good one to include. And then beyond those date fields, I want to make sure that we include information about that specific sample. So let's do sample color, sample size, and then what we're calling dimension, which gives you guys a little bit more info about the size of the actual sample that's going to come through. I'm also going to include vendor on here so that I can tell who I sent this sample request to. So now I've got a basic outline of the report that I can follow. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this, but keep this up so that I can see that format, kind of as a little cheat sheet. So go back to my report builder, and then I can flip back and forth to this. So I've already selected design number. I need short description next. And your the name of the field is going to have to be exactly what it's called in Blue Cherry. So I called it description. The easiest way to go back, if you can't find the word description, is look here at the field that's listed in Blue Cherry and what the name of it is. So I'm going to look for short description particularly. I'm going to pull that over. It automatically drops it down to the bottom of the left-hand side of the screen. I'm going to drag it up underneath design number to match my format that I've already designed. So now I need vendor. Vendor is the same as factory in Blue Cherry. So I'm going to add that one and move it around. Sample type and sample request date and sample due date. Sample color I have, size and dimension. Okay, so I'm just going to reorg these last ones because then it's set and I only have to pull over the ones in the middle. Due date, request date, and sample type. Then I'm just going to come over here and pull these. So here's my request date. Here's my sample type. And I know that because sample due date is not an already indicated field on the sample evaluation page, I've listed this under the sample UDF date 1. So I've already kind of mocked this up. And this is where it comes, which is kind of knowing your system and knowing how you've mapped these fields out on what to pull, especially if it hasn't been renamed yet. So Blue Cherry has something called language reference that will allow me to go in and essentially rename this field. And that would appear over in report building. But for in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and pull sample UDF date 1. Okay, so then I'm going to pull this back into the order that I've got indicated on my Excel spreadsheet. Design number, short description, vendor, sample type, sample request date, sample due date, sample color, size, and dimension. Okay. So now I've got a simple format created. I'm going to go over to grouping. So here, if you want to sort by a specific field that you've indicated, you can indicate that here by reorging the sort. And you would do that just by coming in here and essentially moving these levels around. You have to choose at least one filter. So if I go in here and I try to save my report, you'll get a warning prompt to make sure that this is done. You must filter on or select to show at least one bro. A bro is a Blue Cherry reporting object or just one of these field names. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say based off of my sample type. Might be the best way to do it. And you don't have to think too critically about this. This is how it's going to show up on the report launcher. And for the sake of really building it, you go back and forth a lot in creating these. I'm going to choose sample evaluation date just for the sake of it. And then I'm going to go over to properties. But what's going to happen is when you go to report launcher for that, you're going to see these filters down here, and that provides the users options to filter. It's not going to give them every option that's in this list for filter. It's only going to give the ones that you check mark. You can also make filters required. So if you want to limit the amount of data, say 10 years down the road, you really need to start considering limiting the amount of data, because if somebody runs that report, it's going to take them, 12 hours to run the report. You really don't want to get users into that situation, because once you get in there, it's harder than you think to cancel the task out. So you'll want to require the data. I've seen people require data based off division, off of product category. It also just limits it so they don't run a report and have a bunch of junk that's not applicable to them. So you can always make fields required. You can also default a filter value if you want to. based off of certain considerations of the business or of the people that are running it. So for instance, if I wanted to create pre-defined filters for users, at the end of this, I could create a sample tracking report for design and a sample tracking report for production. And then based off of a preset filter on sample type, I would put in design, and that way they would only ever be able to run the report for samples that had the sample type of design. Same for production. I could limit them to see only pre-production, production, and photography samples or something like that. So that does come in handy to choose what kind of filter and what level of filter you want to put it at. So then advanced filter, this is really for writing expressions. So if you're familiar with, and or clauses, this probably won't come into play with PLM reports. A lot of what you're doing here is basic listings. But if it comes across it, BlueTree does have the ability to write expressions and conditions and things like that in the report tool. So over here on properties, we're going to show this on the launcher, meaning people will be able to find it. I'm not hiding it from them. As soon as I change it from the user type, people will be able to access it. Then I'm also going to click to suppress the banner. What the banner is, and I'll unclick it for the first time. When we run it, you'll see it. It essentially has all of the details of this report included on it. So it's going to summarize, this is the report shell, this is who wrote it, this is the type, this is the user group, this is the time it was last run. It's going to give all of these details. Also, all the fields that we've listed on the right-hand side, all the fields that are used, any grouping or sort, any predetermined filters or any available filters, any kind of conditions here. It's summarizing all of the details of that report, which can come in handy if you're creating a report and the results are not as are expected. If you need help from BC Tech because you just can't quite figure out what's going on, you can always provide that report with the banner included, and it gives them all of the detail of it, helps them kind of move to the next step of troubleshooting really quickly. For the most part, because we're going to be publishing this to users on the report launcher, people normally elect to suppress the banner because it's just a page, like kind of like a cover page for every report that people want to browse past. So we'll check mark that, but I'll show you what it looks like first and foremost. Suppress key line, that is kind of like a higher level. I will leave that unchecked so you guys can see, and then we'll run through a couple of iterations. So suppress key line, what that'll show. If you have numerics in your report, so you can show grand totals, show it at the top of the report, show subtotals on single lines, and also at the grand total line. So those are kind of related to one another. You can also do row shading. I'm going to unselect that right now so you can see what it looks like without row shading, and then we'll kind of do some visual improvements to the report. Down here is page layout. When it comes down to printing, and we'll go through that after I run it in interactive, I'll show you how to troubleshoot printing this report so that you get something that's nice and clean and formatted appropriately, so you don't have to play around with it in any other, Excel type of version before you print it type of thing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and run this puppy. So over on run, if you go to preview, I'm going to save it first. That's why those fields are grayed out, because it's telling me it doesn't quite have it cataloged in the system yet. I'm going to go to interactive preview. And that's just going to run the data, and it's going to pull it up in the format that I've created so far. So this is the banner page. So this gives you all that information about the report. I'm going to run this once, and then I'm going to suppress that banner. That way we don't ever see it again. For the most part, up top, you can see basic report information, including the exact time that the report was run, your company's name on top. Here you can see sample evaluation header report. It's the sample tracking report. All of the nitty gritty and guts and gore is there. On the second page is actually where you're going to see the data. So a couple of things on this. These, when I was talking about suppressing key lines, these are key lines. If you just want a listing report, it's kind of running through subsets of data. As we go down here, these are the key lines that you're going to want to suppress. So we're going to go back to the report builder, and we're going to go back to properties. We're going to suppress the banner, make that go away, and we're going to suppress key lines. I'm going to save it. I'm going to run it again, and you'll see how that changes really quickly and removes a lot of that junk from the screen so the users can just get the data. There's one more key thing that we can probably do to make this easier for the users to read, and that's row shading. If we save it one more time, run preview in interactive mode. Put in like slow click. Here's what it looks like with row shading. So a little easier to read than just a listing here versus row shading every other to kind of highlight it for readability purposes. So if I scroll all the way over to the right, you can see that this impact field is really long. So is the sample type for design. So this is fine and interactive. I normally work in interactive for a while just to kind of get down like, okay, is it producing the data that I want it to produce? Are the columns organized as I want them to be organized kind of thing? Then we might want to consider print preview. And you can do it from here, or you can shoot it over and pull it back out on Report Builder. So now if you look at this, it's really not pretty in a print out format. So we've got page 1 of 3, and not a lot of rows of data, but what's happening is this looks like it's in portrait, and therefore it's giving me 3 pages. Not great. So I'm going to go back over to the Report Builder, go to Properties, go down to Page Layout, and we're going to choose a paper size. I'm going to say letter, and I'm going to try to do this on landscape. Font size 11 is fine. This is if I want a particular row height. I'm going to leave that as is because I don't find 0.34 to be anything that's huge or too small. Show the filter on the header, show captions on header, and suppress company name. If I wanted to do some stuff here where I could condense the space where I'm suppressing it, or if I'm showing the captions on the header, that just kind of will give you, if you have repeated pages, it's like it freezes the top row so that you always have it. You don't just have like a list. If you pull out the 3rd page that just looks like rows and rows of data, it will maintain this header row, essentially. The other thing that I want to do is, so if I change that around, save it, and I run it in a print preview, let's see if that helps. Let's see if we've moved from 3 pages down at all. So now we've got page 1 of 1, which is great. Or 1 of 2? Yeah, 1 of 2. So we've minimized it from 3 to 2, but still not in a very print-friendly format. The reason being these columns are entirely too long. I will never have a design number because these are standardized in the system that will be longer than this. You guys are auto-populating it. So I can change the column width and probably move all this data over. Same with sample type. And if we look down at the 2nd page, also DIMPAC. Those are kind of my real problem fields. I can probably also minimize sample size as well. So I'm going to go back to the builder, go over to layout, set my column width. So over here on design number, I think we've got maximum of like 15 characters there. Short description, I'm going to leave as is. That wasn't a problem field. We had, I know DIMPAC 50 is definitely not necessary. Maybe we can pare that down to 8 characters. Let's see. What else do we have? I can save that okay and just go back because it allows you to keep these tabs open. So sample size I can change, and also sample type. Sample size can probably be taken to 5, and sample type can probably be taken down to 10. Let's click OK, save, and let's run it in a print preview again to see if I now have a format that's going to print logically on one landscape page. And there you go. We've got page 1 of 1 for our row data. Everything fits on there. I can still pare back design number and sample type, which I'm just going to go ahead and do just to center the data and make it look a little bit more logical. So change that to about 50% of what it is, and then also sample type as well. So notice the widths there aren't relative to characters, they're actually pixels, which can be a little bit confusing. Best rule of thumb to do is just look at the field and see how much space you have. Like I was cutting my field widths in half there. I had maybe double the space that I needed, so I just took whatever was in there, which I think was 10, changed it to 5. And same with sample type. I split it in half. Then you can come back to your report. Does it look like okay? So this is how it would print. Just a long listing if you ever wanted to go through it. Now based off of this, like you may be able to flip it back to portrait if you want to, but I always do it in landscape first and foremost just to see how it looks. Then from there, you can always toggle back and forth from here, from interactive to print. Now, it's up to you guys if you want to schedule this report. So now that I have it finalized as well, I can go in here, click save, and if I wanted to, I can change it from user to a corporate level, meaning anybody that logs into Blue Cherry can have access to run this report. Now from here, let's go find this on Report Launcher. So over here on Report Launcher, so you could go down to Product Development Management module, and you could go into Sample Evaluation Header. And when you click on that, you should see a report. And I might have to close out of this and come back into Report Launcher so it sees something new that's created. And there's my sample tracking report. So from here, do you remember that filter that we set? We set one filter, it was sample evaluation date. This is what it's going to look like. If you create multiple and check mark them off, then they'll be listed here. And then the user will then enter that filter value here. When you run the report launcher, you can keep the banner suppressed, or you can uncheck that box in case a user is having problems with it, or you're running it from the launcher and you need to provide that to tech support like we were talking about. From the launcher, as well as from the builder, you can schedule reports. So all you do here is you click schedule, and you come out to the scheduler. So here you can choose to run it one time, run it by the minute, run it hourly, daily, only on business days, weekly, monthly, end of month, yearly, or as a part of a batch process. Batch process just means that it's going to, you link tasks up. So say that you had a report that you wanted to run in conjunction with a process that was run. When an EDI process runs at X time, once that is finished, then kick off this report. Again, maybe not so applicable to PLM, although batch processing is really helpful because what it's doing is it's saying, kick off the first task, link it to the second task. Whenever that first task is done, kick off the second one. And that way you don't have to try to guess how long it's going to take for the report to run. It's just linked together from start to finish. So here, if we were to say run this on business days, we could kick it off, and you can select the time that it runs. Maybe you want it to run at 10 a.m., 10 p.m., 6 a.m. before you come in that day, so you have the most up-to-date data. So you can go ahead and just edit this directly. So 6 a.m. every day on business days, we're saying our sample tracking report is going to run. You can see when the next run is going to be, essentially when you want to begin that and when you want to end that. So let's just run this in the training environment every day for the next week. You would click that here, choose a calendar date of your start and end date, and it'll go ahead and run that way. So here's where you're going to decide down here whether you want to automatically schedule this to print on our printer, so that when you arrive to work, the first thing you do is you grab your sample tracking report off the printer, or you can email it so it drops into your inbox at a specific time. You can also drop it to a place on your server specifically. You can also get notifications or alerts as those have dropped in. I think the system just caught up with me a bit. Here's our end of the week. So we'll run it every day at 6 a.m. starting technically tomorrow through Friday. And then we can say we want to email it. You can specify who. Here's the subject. It defaults to the report name and report shell. You can edit that. So if you don't want to include the report shall because certain team members might not have any understanding of what that means. I'm going to put my email address in here. And then you can include a message. Now, I always leave this little note here at the bottom of the email. Every once in a while, if users aren't super familiar with it or you're not scheduling that report really frequently, users will try to reply back to the email that sent them the report. That means that this is a system-generated email. Don't reply back to it, essentially. But you can leave a specific message. Here's today's sample tracking report. Pardon my awful typing. And then you decide what kind of format you want it in. So do you want to drop this report to them via email in an Excel format, in a PDF format? You can do some other fancy ones called comma separated values, which is essentially Excel, but it removes and drops in the data a little bit cleaner, delineated text in a text file, same type of thing. So if you're doing type of like data conversion, sending people reports for processing of information, then you can absolutely choose one of those file formats. Most likely you're going to choose the PDF or the Excel in PLM. So you can also drop it to the file. Notice once you've set that up, it gets a little green check mark box next to it. Here's if you want to drop it to a specific file location. So you would just go out to the ... and essentially choose where on your server you want it to drop to. It'll drop with the report name and with a date stamp. And you can choose what file. Notify, this is notification on success. So, hey, your report was sent. Also notification if there's no data. So if the report processes and there was 0 things to report for that day, you can also send that to yourself a notification. This is more admin type of function. Or on failure. For some reason that report fails to run, who do I need to notify? And you can list that in here. So on success, you can alert yourself. You can alert another admin or alert nobody. You don't have to alert anybody. You can also drop it into the document inbox. And what that is on the command center over here. You'll see that there's an inbox there that if you don't want to send these files to email, maybe because you're concerned they're going to be too big, or maybe because you just don't want to junk up your email, you can send them to the command center and people can pick them up there. So if you're going to drop them to the inbox, then you can select the blue cherry users that you guys have set up. Again, you can choose to set these up to a group setting. So you can do a BC user group, send them to everybody in that group, or you can choose individual users as well. You can send a note with that to let them know, like, hey, this is the sample tracking report for today. Especially when it's newer, sometimes those notes are helpful. You can assign a priority to it, and again, you can choose your file type. And then you can submit tasks. There's some advanced scheduling that's in here. You guys, again, probably won't use it. For the sake of just kind of seeing how this comes through, I'm actually going to change this to a one-time frequency and have it sent now. We'll see if we can catch 2:40 before the clock flips. So that's AM. There we go. Okay, so now you've scheduled your report. So again, if it's a daily or monthly, that's all you really have to do. If you wanted to come back in here, you can maintain that schedule and edit that schedule from the task monitor. Again, this is more of like kind of an admin function, but you would come in here, you're able to see based off of the tasks that you have scheduled, and scheduled reports are a task within Blue Cherry. Here's the one-off that we just ran, all of these instances that are out here. When it says gathering data, that's an indication that a process is happening in the background. So this means all of those will run successfully. After my report processes that we scheduled for 2:40, we should see that appear as a refresh task in here where it ran at 2:40 successfully. Let's see, back to the builder. That's pretty much it. I'm going to check my inbox to see if our scheduled report came through. And it's very possible, especially in the beginning, that these reports go to your junk mail because they are a system-generated report. So I would say just make sure that users are checking there first and foremost and kind of saying, yeah, that's an accepted email type of thing that you can route through my inbox. So when this comes through my email, and I don't even think I'm going to wait around for it, it's going to look exactly like our last report looked like, except I think I chose PDF. So it's going to look exactly like this. From here, you can also export this stuff in case you want to play around with the data in Excel and things like that. Does anybody have any questions relating to Report Builder, Report Launcher, scheduling reports, anything that we just went through?
No, I think you did a great job. Thank you, Molly. Or Nicole, do you have a question? Sorry.
Sorry. I was just curious. I jumped in a little bit late, but I jumped in right in the middle of you explaining the email thing where you can auto-generate sending out emails. But is that coming from our personal email, or is that coming from Blue Cherry and you can't respond to that?
It's coming from Blue Cherry. So when you schedule a report, it comes from the system.
Oh, okay. Cool. Thanks.
All right, guys. So I'm going to end this just because this recording's separate, and then I'm going to send that invite out. And you're going to join in the next 2 minutes. So you're going to get disconnected from GoToMeeting, and then we're going to rejoin, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Sounds good.